Thanks for coming. Before we get started, I just wanted to say one thing and thank somebody, and Martin Mayhew. And Martin has decided to retire, and I can't say enough great things about him. He spent 26 years in the NFL. I first met him, the first time I ever had any correspondence with him, I was at UCLA, and I wrote letters to all the front office people in the NFL, and one guy got back to me. It was Martin when he was with the Lions, and it was really cool. And never got to meet him until I got to San Francisco, and he was a great coworker, great confidant, great friend, and he's 26 years in the NFL. He's dedicated a lot of his life to this franchise as a player and then as a GM. Also got his law degree at Georgetown, which is pretty impressive. And for the last a little over a year, when I got here, he was one of the first people that I really wanted to keep and work with. And I was lucky enough that he wanted to stay. And we couldn't have done what we did last year without him. He was instrumental in everything we did in terms of the draft, free agency. He made a lot of big deals in free agency, and he was just a great friend, great confidant, just a great person. And so just wanted to thank him for all he's given to this franchise and this league, and he will be missed, but just wanted to say how much I appreciate him. He's we talk about commanders a lot. He's a true commander. So with that, I'll take some questions, and let's get rolling.
Will you fill his role in some capacity?
Yeah, we're still looking into that right now, Nikki. Nothing. We don't have anybody earmarked for that exact role. But he does leave a big hole in terms of the front office. He did a lot of things for us, and he's a person I leaned on a lot. So we'll look to fill that in, whether it's immediately or in the future, like after the draft or something. We're still working through that.
And you obviously out this morning that you granted John Allen permission to seek a trade. And what went into that decision? What did the conversations been after that?
Yeah, that is true. We have done that, and with John, he's another person who's been a great commander, a great person for this franchise, and he's going into the last year of his deal, and wanted to give him and his representation, Blake Baratz, who's a really good agent. They just talked about it and said wanted to be able to explore opportunities, and so we let them do that, and we're staying in contact with them nearly every day. Just texted with them this morning, and really everything's still on the table in terms of whether it's a trade or staying here or whatever. So we're still going through that. It's kind of early in the stages. We haven't done a lot of exploring yet, but that's kind of where we're at right now.
Do you feel like you need to reach a resolution with that situation before free agency starts?
We haven't really set any deadlines. We're just going to stay in contact, and we'll meet with him. He'll be here later this week, and Blake will, and so we'll reconvene there. But I think that the two main things is we're always going to do what's best for our organization, but we also want to do right by John too, and so those things are important to us.
A lot of early success last season with a lot of young talent on this roster. A lot of you drafted from this, from being at this event. How important for you is free agency in the coming months to balance that out with some veteran talent to kind of get this team to the next level?
Yeah, that's a great question, and we always want to build through the draft, and we'll continue to do that. But in the situation we're in, we got 28 free agents. I think it's 28. So we got a lot of holes again on our roster in terms of players that played really well for us last year. So we'll be active in free agency because we have to be just to fill the team. But a lot of those we'll look to bring a lot of the guys we had back from last year and then build off of that.
Where's the team's confidence with Marshawn Lattimore right now?
Sorry, you're talking at the same time.
Where's the team's confidence with Marshawn Lattimore right now?
Really high. We're with Marshawn, I spoke about it at the end of the year, and he came into a tough situation, and he competed his tail off, and he's the type of guy we want on the field, and we're really excited to have him in this offseason and build with him.
Do you try to stick to a height,
I'll get you next.
Height, weight, speed, characteristics by position? And if so, when do you stray from that?
Yeah, I think every team has those guidelines. I think just about all 32 teams have that, like a kind of a standard for what they want at each position. But there's always exceptions, and you know, when you stray from that, it just depends on the position, the person, the player, and everything like that. I think a great example of that is Mikey Sanderstill last year, who I think as a corner, obviously you want a 6'2" corner who's quick as a cat and runs a 4.3, and but those guys don't really exist unless you're like top 5 pick of the draft. So a guy like Mikey defies those standards and plays bigger than he is, and so he's one example. But there's thousands of examples around the NFL of guys that don't fit in those parameters but are still excellent NFL players.
How would you describe the relief that comes with walking around here knowing you've already found your franchise goals?
It's a lot. It feels a lot better than last year. So no, it's we're thrilled to have Jayden, and couldn't be happier with his first year, and know he's going to keep getting better and better because not only that's what people do, but that's because of who he is, and he's always going to try to improve himself. And he's his own toughest critic, and he's going to do everything he can to maximize everything he has.
Looking at day-to-day moving an organization that has that guy and one that's looking for those.
Yeah, I think it's a big difference, really. I think you have one or you're looking for one. I think that's pretty established. So we're very happy that we have one.
When you met with Jayden last year, can you talk about the VR when you met with him? Was that a big topic between you guys, and was he curious about how you guys were going to follow through and talk about training this year?
Yeah, I think that was really important. Early on, Jayden was the guy we knew we were going to draft, and we started talking with Cognalize, which is the company that we use for the VR, and they're an excellent company, excellent people to work with, and they're very committed to Jayden, which is really cool too. So they've, whenever we've needed anything, they've done a great job of helping us out. So it's a big part of his development. Obviously there's a lot of other things that go into that. It's not just VR, but I think it's a great tool, and he uses it really well, and we'll continue to use that.
Looking at places you've been, including Washington, what value does it add when you have a quarterback you can bounce ideas off of, you can kind of collaborate with as you look for different perspectives?
Yeah, I think with Jayden or any player, it's always good to get the perspective of our players and see what's important to them and their thoughts, because everybody has a different lens on things, and those guys have a really good perspective of what goes on in the locker room, what they need, what they want, and so getting their ideas, whether it be other players or what we can do to improve the facility, which they've given us great input on that, and always having an open dialogue, not just with Jayden, but with all our players, is a great thing.
Jerry, what easier does it become to evaluate your roster and what you need when you have a quarterback like Jayden Daniels?
Well, it's easier to not need a quarterback, but it's always a challenge every year, and that's why we have a great team. DQ and I talk every day about how we can really improve our team and what's the best way to do that, and we have a great staff to help us with that. But it's going to be a challenge every year, not just last year, not just this year, but next year is going to be a new set of challenges, and really excited that we have a great staff around us to help us.
Adam, what are your thoughts on what you guys do offensively? When you look at Ohio State receivers specifically, is there something that you see differently in what Brian Hartline does and how those guys move to the league?
Yeah, Brian Hartline's a great coach, and he has been for a long time, and I think he pours his heart and soul into those guys and getting them ready for the NFL, and a lot of them have a lot of success early on. I know we had a couple of them, and so I think you can ask any team, and they'll say they have a lot of respect for those guys and that staff, and especially him in particular.
Adam, what are your thoughts on the state of the running back? For a number of years, it kind of felt like maybe it was being devalued across the league. Then last year, we saw teams invest in running backs like the Packers, Eagles, Ravens, and an uptick in 1,000-yard rushers. Do you see a trend where the running backs gaining more revival, or is that kind of unique to last year?
I think both really. I think they're probably going to be a little more valued, but I think last year was a unique free agent class too with running backs, where they had some really good players that were out there and available. So I think it'll probably even out. I think they were probably devalued a little bit too much, and I think it'll even out, kind of go back to where it should be. But I think last year was a little bit of an anomaly just because of how good the talent was in the free agent class.
And the perception of the franchise of team changed league-wide with the run that you you guys had. Did it change anything for you in terms of how you're viewing building this team because of how far you guys got in the postseason?
You know, in terms of the perception, that hasn't really changed how we go about things. I think our principles are the same. We want to bring in great people, great commanders that are going to help us win. So we're proud of how the DMV's rallied behind us, and really thrilled about what's to come, and just to see how our fans came out towards the end of the year and really supported us. And I think DQ's talked about it, but some of those games they really the players feel it. They really do. The Falcons game in particular, and so really proud of that. Really happy for that, and had a lot of people that I know that grew up in the DMV and have reached out and said how happy they are. So that's something that I think we're all proud of, and we have a lot to thank. We have Josh to thank for that, and DQ and his staff, and so we're going to do whatever we can to keep making those people proud.
Both you and head coach Dan Quinn give a heavy weight to the person as much as the player. So after the success last year, is there any part to where you think the roster and the locker room is matured enough to where if you needed to bring somebody in who may have a little bit of red flags or question marks on the character side of things, you guys feel like you guys could withstand that?
Yeah, I think you hit it right on, and that was one of the coolest things when we were going through this process last year, when I really got to know DQ and we saw everything. We're really aligned on everything, and that is a big thing for us, and finding the right people, and that's not just players, that's support staff, coaches, everybody. So that's always going to be at the core of what we do, and I've been a part of teams that when you start sacrificing that, then it usually doesn't work, and so we've set out and really, I think what's really cool is in our exit interviews this year, we talked to a lot of players, and one of the biggest things that they hit on was we liked all the people you brought in, the players and the commanders and the competitors, and so don't lose sight of that. So we heard that from our players, we felt it ourselves, so that's always going to be at the core of what we do, and there may be an exception here or there, or you make a mistake, and that not on purpose, but that's going to always be at the core of what we do.
All right. Thanks, Adam. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.